The world of Aveum is war-torn, destroyed by the very magic humans have used for countless years. Only a powerful battle mage could save it from Sandrakk and his army that seek to conquer and control all magic. This is a sponsored video with a story I am very happy to tell. There is also a link in the description for you to get the game. When EA reached out to me to create a timeline of events that lead up to one of their latest games, Immortals of Aveum, I accepted right away. My older viewers will know that I love magical combat in games, and Immortals of Aveum has it, a lot of it. We play as Jack, a powerful battle mage who finds himself in the center of the Everwar. To understand completely what has happened in Aveum's timeline to lead up to this point, we need to go back thousands of years. So grab yourself a snack and some drinks and enjoy the journey. In the beginning, there was the Shrouded realm, a wellspring of pure magic, dreams and prophecy, a mystical, mysterious and powerful place. It is unknown if this realm was created or if it formed naturally. It would, however, become one of the most important realms in existence. Over time, other realms and worlds formed outside of this one of which was the world of Aveum. Within the Shrouded realm, an entity now known as the Pentasad arrived. This giant creature had 5 faces. Some say a face to represent each aspect of the humans that had made Aveum their home. While these two realms were not connected, the powerful Pentasad found an interest in the humans of Aveum and used its power and knowledge of the Shrouded realm to gift them with its magical properties. To do this, the Pentasad anchored the Shrouded realm to Aveum with 5 magical fonts spread across the lands. These fonts, in turn, released the magical energies of the Shrouded realm into Aveum through sprawling ley lines that spanned across the skies of the entire land. After this moment, each human born on Aveum was gifted with magical abilities. Across the lands of Aveum, magic became a normal resource to the earliest known human civilization, the Oremen tribes. In their time, they constructed giant colossals that towered high above the ground. After their fall, for an unknown reason, the survivors adapted the language and they formed into the Aristea. The use of magic in the world was just what the Pentasad had envisioned. There was, however, an unexpected side effect. The humans, as planned, siphoned magic through the ley lines from the Shrouded realm to perform extraordinary feats. Yet, the magic needed a way to return to the Shrouded realm after its use. Without a natural way to return, the magic combined together over a spot in the center of Aveum and slammed down into the land. This created a magical hole that allowed it to return to the realm. Anything or anyone that attempted to enter this hole was disintegrated in a small explosion of pale fire at the depths of 1,688 latticells, and magic could not heal the damage. As the years passed, this hole expanded as more magic was used, and it was labeled the Wound of Aveum, or Maladar in other territories. Within the Shrouded realm, the Pentasad came up with a way to solve this problem. It created the Allori, a new species that had a natural ability to nullify the effects of magic around them and filter it into the Shrouded realm. The first of the Allori, Rook, was guided by the Pentasad and he was told of his mission, that he would guide the rest of the Allori out of the Shrouded realm into the world of Aveum. This would be their new home. In their worship of the Pentasad, they would live in harmony with the humans as a part of a cycle. It was simple. After the humans had siphoned magic from the Shrouded realm, the Allori would send it back safely through the fonts. That the humans would use magic to create grand wonders that would amaze the Allori, and they would heal the wound that the humans had made in their innocence. Upon their arrival in Aveum, Rook and the Allori met with the humans. This encounter did not go as expected. The Allori's hopes of peace and grand wonders were destroyed instantly as the humans began to slaughter them. The humans saw them as demons, creatures that had come to steal their magic. Those who survived fled underground and formed a new home in secret, in the darkness. The Allori still worshipped the Pentasad, and over the years grew a hatred towards the humans who labeled them magic eaters. And here, the Allori stayed in their home of the Underdwell and attacked any human that entered it as the wound slowly expanded. Above ground, the Aristeia attempted to study and learn as much about magic and the ley lines available to them. They learned that blue magic was the binding of physical forces, red magic was volatile, those who possessed the ability to control it were used as battle mages in the wars between lands, and finally, green magic, the most difficult to master, displayed properties of growth, death, and transition. A strong force to hold. Upon the birth of a human, they typically showed the natural ability to harness one of these colors. There were, however, a rare few, named Diarchs, that could harness two of them, and even rarer were the Triarchs that could harness all three, red, blue, and green. The more powerful of these humans could wield magic naturally, and for those who wanted to strengthen their power, they sought out and constructed sigils. Each sigil itself was different, as each material used to construct it had different magical properties. Essentially, they were used to enhance and focus their magical ability. As the Aristeia continued to build up their empire, in their study, they learned of the Pentasad and the Shrouded realm through their dreams. From this, they discovered the magical fonts and how the ley lines came from them. To enhance their power even more, the Aristeia built the Shrine Forge in the Eastern Lands, and inside, they developed and constructed the Thrada Kul, the Binding Stone. This artifact allowed them to commune with the fonts directly, and as a result, their power and understanding of magic increased immensely, some say even similar to the level of the Pentasad itself. At the height of the Aristeian Empire, they built their greatest achievements, the Leyline Towers. These towers were constructed on nexus points below the ley lines. With these, they siphoned and redirected magic on an incredible scale. They reshaped reality, changed the course of rivers, extended life, removed disease, and the standard limitations humans had faced for years. In the space of only a couple of years, the Aristeians pulled cities from the ground and built up an empire across the whole of Aveum that would have normally taken thousands of years to do. Due to their connection to such power, the most powerful of Aristeian Magni mutated, they grew taller, and their once human features turned into something else. While the majority of the Aristeia used magic for good, there was one who had other ideas. In an event still shrouded in mystery, one person managed to acquire the Binding Stone and they attempted to control all of the fonts themselves. This action ultimately resulted in a magical purge that collapsed the entire Aristeian Empire. Nearly every memory of their achievements was gone, and all that remained were the ruins of their grand structures that spanned across all corners of Aveum. What came next was the Lalation, a period of time in which many warred with each other. These wars themselves are also shrouded in mystery as a result of powerful magic that concealed this period of time. All we know is that it was a tragic time of confusion and loss. The fall of the Aristane Empire set humanity back and they regressed. A grand civilization had fallen. Their knowledge and languages also disappeared with them. As for what remained of humanity, they did their best to push through. In these dark times, over the course of many years, they looked to the most magically inclined of their kind to guide them through this darkness. Magic never changed, and with it, humanity built a new form of communication that could be read in the ley lines. Aveum eventually split into 5 different territories with their own royal houses, laws, religion, and culture. The Forest Kingdom of Lucium, the Kingdom of Oremen, the Desert Kingdom of Rasharn, the Ocean Kingdom of Kalthus, and the Snow Kingdom of Kalthus. As they built, each kingdom learned what they could from the Aristane ruins in each of their territories, and then built over them. In the center of the world, between these kingdoms, was the Wound. From it stood a large statue of the Pentasard. From the perspective of humanity, this was an effigy to a godly being that watched over them with its 5 faces. Due to thousands of years of manipulation of the ley lines, it would appear that the Pentasard's original vision of magic for all humans was, in a way, corrupted. Some were born with incredible magical ability. These were labelled the Magni. Some showed little to no magical ability. These were labelled the Lightless, and there were others that at first showed no ability but suddenly exploded with it. These were labelled as the Unforeseen, and generally were looked down upon in society. As a world that thrived and relied on magic to live, the Lightless became almost subservient to the Magni. Each kingdom also formed its own High Magni order to help it fight in wars. Over the years, each kingdom grew. New spells were crafted, learned, and even discovered on spell altars scattered across Aveum. They learned how to ride the ley lines to travel Aveum faster, built portals, and even inhabited Aristane or even older structures that still functioned. Humanity had adapted and grown from the disaster of the Aristane Fall. Underground, in the Underdwell, the seemingly immortal Allori kept away from the humans. For the few humans that did encounter them, they spread word of the demons that lived underground who ate anyone with magical ability. Rook's hatred for the humans had grown over this time, and it also spread to the Pentasard. It had promised him and the Allori a peaceful Aveum where they could coexist with humanity, only to be hunted into the ground. So they simply stayed there for their safety. Of course, with 5 kingdoms, each ruler had something on their land that another wanted, and as a result, wars began. Within Lucium, the city of Nosea was commonly used as a neutral ground of parley to discuss a solution. Yet, a war would come that would change everything: the Everwar. It is unknown how this war started, but the Everwar has raged on for centuries, and its ultimate goal? To control magic. From historical texts, it is suggested that Rasharn waged war on the whole of Aveum for control. Oremen attempted to stay out of the war. Kalthus in part joined Rasharn's forces. Lucium became an equal force against Rasharn, and Kalthus was split as some forces joined Rasharn and others joined Lucium. Kalay was home to ancient titanic war machines. The Sea Kings of this kingdom at first did attempt to fight in the Everwar between their territorial split, yet the Conclave of Golad forbade the Sea Kings of Kalay from using the war machines in the Everwar due to humanitarian reasons. If they broke this, they were threatened to be heavily sanctioned. On the side of Lucium, the soldiers of the Light's army had a mandatory draft age of 16 years old for a minimum of 12 years service. The Lightless were used as foot soldiers under the orders of the Magni. They used colossal war machines, frigates, and skiff carriers against the Nightblades of Rasharn. Within the ranks of the Light's army were the Order of Immortals, once the largest high order in the 5 kingdoms of the most powerful Magni. This Lucium-based order was led by a Grand Magnus, and not only did they fight in the Everwar, but they also attempted to clean up the wound. They knew magic had caused this issue, but they still used a healing spell to reverse some of the damage. Using magic to heal damage caused by magic was not extremely efficient, but it helped. The Order of Immortals had set up their headquarters on the Palathon, a ship that's design appeared to predate even the Ajman period. Even the best and brightest could not figure out how it functioned or when it was built. For thousands of years, the Everwar raged across Aveum. Chunks of natural wildlife died out, and the constant fighting, predominantly between Lucium and Rasharn, left the Order of Immortals' numbers reduced. The ancient leyline tower of Ulthium Fields was used to mass-produce many magical items. Mana crystals that allowed the Magni to enhance the power of their sigils, Farkol stones that allowed them to communicate over long distances, power cores, and battle constructs. The control of a leyline tower in this war was incredibly important, and battles for these towers were consistently fought. On the Rasharnian side, the Nightblades of Rasharn mostly consisted of Rasharnian-born Magni, along with sympathizers from Kalthus. Over the years of this conflict, the borders of Kalay consistently changed, and the kingdom itself was split into 3 separate parts. Once considered the kingdom of entertainment, the location of adventure novels, picture house serials, and songs of fabled pirates, no more. They at first attempted to resist the foreign armies in their borders, but upon failure, they instead leaned into it and offered land to the neighbouring kingdoms. The north of Kalay sided with the armies of Lucium, and the south favoured Rasharn. In doing so, they profited from the war at the cost of their sovereignty, as light army vessels became permanent fixtures in their waters. The kingdom of Oremen attempted to stay impartial. This did not stop the Light's army of Lucium and the Nightblades of Rasharn from fighting on their land. The Oremaic people just wanted these invaders off their land. This fight for the leyline towers, control, and ultimate power was thought by many to collapse their society. At least that would end this Everwar. In the time of Thaddeus of House Archelon's leadership of the Order of Immortals, the number of Immortals had dropped drastically, and in response, he actively sought out new potential members to join. The wound expanded every day as more magic was used on the battlefields. The Immortals attempted to slow down the expansion of the wound as much as they could, and the corruption that appeared across Aveum, but even they could not heal it all. In 983 PA, a child was born in Woundward Rasharn, Sandrakk. His parents were influential academics in the House of Ipal regime. Unfortunately, when he was 16, warlords from the House of Arakan overthrew the Ipal regime and with it took control of Rasharn. To avoid political persecution, Sandrakk's family and many more of Rasharn fled to the northern territories of Kalay that aligned themselves with Lucium. It appeared many refugees had fled to northern Kalay, and in the search of new, young, potential immortals to help the Light Army of Lucium in their fight, Grand Magnus Thaddeus met with the refugees, and here he met Sandrakk. Thaddeus noticed almost instantly that not only was Sandrakk a Magni, but he also had the ability to control red, blue, and green magic. He was a Triarch. Over the years, Sandrakk was trained and he fought for the Light's Army as a member of the Order of Immortals. Here, he met Kirkan, in which they formed a strong friendship. Together, they stood against the Kalthus estates, the Sea King Usurper, and the Colossals of the Ajma Pretenders, to name just a few. Despite his many successes on the battlefield against his homeland of Rasharn, Sandrakk consistently encouraged his supervisors to broker a peace deal and end the Everwar. Just because he could beat them, it did not mean he enjoyed it. In approximately 1019 PA, the Kingdom of Oremen attempted to create a society where magic was freely shared between Magni and lightless commoners alike. This idea even passed over its borders to the other kingdoms. Yet, this movement created by Magister Akoth of House Myadine changed Oremen forever. In their experiment to see if this worked, an explosion ripped the whole of Oremen apart into floating islands. The event, named the Gatorond, not only showed that magic could not be shared between Magni and Lightless, but it also changed the Oremaic people's way of life. They learned to push themselves to ride the ley lines across the sky islands of their kingdom. The Everwar appeared to be at a stalemate between Lucium and Rasharn. Oremen had to deal with its own issues, Kalay was split between the two kingdoms, and Kalthus' part is still unclear. They were at once at war with Lucium as they sided with Rasharn. However, as the centuries passed, they aligned themselves with Lucium against Rasharn. Grand Magnus Thaddeus later left the Order of Immortals and was replaced by Grand Magnus Kirkan of House Argentine. Her years of service in this war had earned her this position, and she had a difficult choice to make. Kirkan, King Valantian of Lucium, and a select few immortals had a plan to stop Rasharn. They knew the ley lines were responsible for magic, so in secret, a group of immortals were sent to the Sky Isles, and there they managed to poison the ley lines that flowed above Rasharn. This action had an instant impact. Any child born within the kingdom of Rasharn had no magical ability, no connection to the Shrouded realm. This meant that all of their future soldiers would be lightless, the perfect way to end a war that relied on magic. This operation had been performed in secret, a secret also kept from Sandrakk. When he found out, he was enraged and confronted his old friend Kirkan. He had been very vocal about peace with his homeland so that he could return one day. In his rage, he swore to tell the world what the Immortals had done. In return, Kirkan responded with, "We'll kill you first." This conversation put an end to the once strong friendship between the two. Grand Magnus Kirkan believed that Sandrakk would no longer be useful to the Order of Immortals. So, to remove a potential threat, she had him dishonorably discharged from the Light Army and Order of Immortals, and sent back to Rasharn in the hopes his many enemies there would be the death of him. The four kingdoms outside of Rasharn hoped this would finally be the end of the Everwar. Grand Magnus Kirkan, however, underestimated her former friend and how he would react in this situation. The kingdom of Rasharn was at the weakest point it had been in for many years. Their royal house was frail, there was no new magical blood, and Lucium had an opportunity to stop this war. Yet Sandrakk once again changed everything. Upon his arrival in his homeland, Sandrakk, a powerful triarch, massacred any who attempted to kill him. He had proven his strength to those around, and as his family had once followed House Ipel, he helped them overthrow the reigning House of Arakun to return Rasharn to its former glory. As a result, Sandrakk established himself as leader of Rasharn, his kingdom surrendered to him, and the Everwar continued. By 1038 PA, Sandrakk had strengthened Rasharn enough to fight Lucium. Rasharn's High Order, the Order of Masks, also followed his lead. One of his greatest victories was the Battle of Glavegate. Glavegate was the ancestral fortress of the ruling Kalthus family, House Kalthus. In this assault, Sandrakk and his Knights of Rasharn broke down the walls of the fortress and burned those who resisted alive. Having conquered the kingdom of Kalthus with this move, he claimed control of the Oathbroken, Kalthus' equivalent to the Order of Masks or the Order of Immortals. Rasharn could not produce its own Magni, so Sandrakk ordered his armies to indoctrinate soldiers from the other kingdoms upon their capture. In a risky move to traverse Aveum even faster, airships flew above the wound, an act of aggression that signaled to the rest of Aveum that he would not back down. Sandrakk had become a much greater force in the Everwar as a result of the betrayal of the Order of Immortals. He did not just want to stop them, but he wanted full control of all magic, the 5 fonts, the leyline towers, and even humanity's ability to siphon from the ley lines. The Everwar that had lasted for countless years appeared not to end anytime soon. By 1039 PA, the 4 kingdoms feared Sandrakk and Rasharn. In Lucium, stories were told of his horrific acts of war, his burning of the survivors of his invasions, and his covert attacks. The worst part was that his armies continued to move north towards Lucium. Not only was Sandrakk an issue that scared Aveum, but the wound in the center of the land continued to grow faster every day. To strengthen the Light's army of Lucium, Grand Magnus Kirkun actively sought out new Magni to join the Order of Immortals. She was a diarch, and it had been 2 generations since a known triarch had been born. Yet, in the bridge city of Serin, an unforeseen Kol'jak had not discovered his power, an unforeseen that would become extremely important in the next stage of the Everwar. A battle 5 years in the future, in 1044 PA, the Battle of Ulthian Fields was foreseen to decide the victor of the Everwar. But what was so important about this field? It was home to an ancient Aristean leyline tower. How did this battle play out? Would anyone be able to stop Sandrakk? What was his ultimate goal? And why was Jack so important in this event? And the many more to come. Find out in Immortals of Aveum. Developed by Ascendant Studios and published under the EA Originals label, Immortals of Aveum is a high-energy, single-player, first-person shooter game with a twist. You are using powerful magic, not guns. The story is also great. As Jack, we play as a battle mage that fights against legions of soldiers and pretty deadly magic wielders in the Everwar as you traverse against the 5 kingdoms of Aveum and the Shrouded realm in an attempt to stop Sandrakk. With more than 25 spells, 80 talents to specialize your combat style, various sigils that make your magic even more powerful, various enemies, puzzles, and generally, the stunning world of Aveum. It is an adventure you will never forget. The combat is deep, easy to understand, and rewarding to master. My favourite part, aside from the deep lore, is that you can explore each region and find secret chests with upgrades so you can become even more powerful. Thank you to EA for reaching out with this incredible opportunity to explore a timeline with so much lore. Once again, check out Immortals of Aveum with my link in the description below to buy the game and learn more about the world. This was the history of Aveum and a guide to the Everwar. Before I end this video, I would quickly like to mention my amazing gold tier patrons and channel members. Jonas, Lewis, Queen Arby, Fluffy the Dragon, Chicken Guy 791, Ruben Mendoza, Duke, Toadnut, Oren X, Azu, Karatana, AJ, Verona, Comfy, BG Games, Apravis, and Arnis. This is where our story ends. Check back next week for a new one.